All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Thomas, and I do educational stuff here on this channel. Today is video number 132 on the reciprocal system of theory. This is a theory that was promulgated by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century, and he died in 1990. We're right now looking at his 3-volume work called The Structure of the Physical Universe, and volume 2, or second edition. And this includes 3 books, the first of which is called Nothing But Motion. And that's the basic gist of Larson's theory. It's a system of theory, a theory of everything. It means that if you understand the system, you can plug it into any subject. And Larson plugged it into many subjects, but especially physics and chemistry and astronomy and economics and metaphysics, including religion, philosophy, and psychology, and a few other subjects as well. Other people have attempted to plug it into other subjects, especially Dr. Bruce Perret, the late Dr. Bruce Perret, who died back in 2020. Plugged it into all kinds of crypto history and free energy and things like that. Right now, we are looking, the gist of the basic theory is that we live in a universe of motion. Not a universe of matter and not a universe of energy, but a universe of motion. Matter and energy are just specific kinds of motion, as is everything else. Everything else is made out of motion. So we have motion as the common denominator and as the kind of null point behind the universe. So if you strip away everything and are left with nothing, then you still have motion. And that is kind of what Larson's getting at with this title, Nothing But Motion. And that also means that, like in Einstein's universe, the speed of light is the maximum speed of the universe. In Larson's universe, the speed of light is the midpoint or the null point of the universe, or the origin even. And so there's half the universe that's moving faster than the speed of light, along with the half that's moving slower than the speed of light. And this half that's moving faster is what he calls the cosmic sector, or sector 2. And this is where things like life and intelligence come from. And it goes further than that. He covered that in his final book called Beyond Space and Time, which is the book on metaphysics. And we went over that. We just got done going over that about 2-3 weeks ago. So I think I did about 90 videos on that book. So if you want to check that out, you can go back a few weeks in time, a few months in time. But right now we're looking at his book, Nothing But Motion. We are about at the end of the preface, and then we'll be able to start right in on chapter 1. Okay. Here are Larson's words. Because of this large increase in the size of the work, the new edition will be issued in several volumes. The first volume is self-contained. It develops the basic laws and principles applicable to physical phenomena in general, and defines the entire chain of deductions leading from the fundamental postulates to each of the conclusions that are reached in the various physical areas that are covered. The subsequent volumes will apply the same basic laws and principles to a variety of other phenomena. It has seemed advisable to change the order of the presentation to some extent, and as a result of a substantial amount of material omitted from the first edition has been included in this volume, whereas some subjects such as electric and magnetic phenomena that were discussed rather early in the first edition have been deferred to later volumes. For the benefit of those who do not have access to the first edition, which is out of print, and wish to examine what the reciprocal system of theory has to say about these deferred items before the subsequent volumes are published, I will say that brief discussions of some of these subjects are contained in my 1965 publication, New Light on Space and Time. And some further astronomical information with particular reference to the recently discovered compact astronomical objects can be found in Quasars and Pulsars, published in 1971. Okay, and then he spends another paragraph acknowledging all of the other people who've helped him along the way. And for the purposes of this video, these people will remain anonymous, but just in order to save time. There's a few notable names in there, including Carla Ruckert and Donald Elkins. Those are two of the three who put together what we call the raw material, and that ended up costing Don Elkins his life. And you can read about that in, it's also called the Law of One material. Okay, now the other thing that I was going to mention is that when Larson says the universe is made out of motion, other people have arrived at that conclusion before, including Descartes and Hobbes, but they didn't redefine motion in the way that Larson did. Larson defined motion as the relationship between space and time, and that relationship was a general reciprocal relationship. Okay, so that is where the term reciprocal system comes from, the relationship between space and time. Okay, he went over that a little bit earlier in the preface, but he'll get to it here in chapter 1, which is just called Background. To the man of the Stone Age, the world in which he lived was a world of spirits. Powerful gods hurled shafts of lightning through waves against the shore and sent winter storms howling down out of the north. Lesser beings held sway in the forests, among the rocks, and in the flowing streams. Malevolent demons, often in league with the mighty rulers of the elements, threatened the human race from all directions, and only the intervention of an assortment of benevolent but capricious deities made man's continued existence possible at all. This hypothesis that material phenomena are direct results of the actions of superhuman beings was the first attempt to define the fundamental nature of the physical universe, the first general physical concept. The scientific community currently regards it as a juvenile and rather ridiculous attempt at an explanation of nature. But actually, it was plausible enough to remain essentially unchallenged for thousands of years. In fact, it is still accepted in whole or in part by a very substantial proportion of the population of the world. Such widespread acceptance is not as inexplicable as it may seem to the scientifically trained mind. It has been achieved only because the spirit concept does have some genuine strong points. Its structure is logical. If one accepts the premises, he cannot legitimately contest the conclusions. Of course, these premises are entirely ad hoc, but so are many of the assumptions of modern science. The individual who accepts the idea of a nuclear force without demur is hardly in a position to be very critical of these or those who believe in the existence of evil spirits, because they're the same thing. A special merit of this physical theory based on the spirit concept is that it is a comprehensive theory. It encounters no difficulties in assimilating new discoveries, since all that is necessary is to postulate some new demon or deity. Indeed, it can even deal with discoveries not yet made, simply by providing a God of the unknown. But even though a theory may have some good features or may have led to some significant accomplishments, this does not necessarily mean that it is correct, nor that it is adequate to meet current requirements. Some 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, it began to be realized by the more advanced thinkers that the spirit concept had some very serious weaknesses. The nature of these weaknesses is now well understood, and no extended discussion of them is necessary. The essential point to be recognized is that at a particular stage in history, the prevailing concept of the fundamental nature of the universe was subjected to critical scrutiny and found to be deficient. It was therefore replaced by a new general physical concept. This was no minor undertaking. The spirit concept was well entrenched in the current pattern of thinking, and it had powerful support from the establishment, which is always opposed to major innovations. In most of the world as it then existed, such a break with accepted thought would have been impossible. But for some reason, an atmosphere favorable to critical thinking prevailed for a time in Greece and neighboring areas, and this profound alteration of the basic concept of the universe was accomplished there. The revolution in thought came slowly and gradually. Anaxagoras, who is sometimes called the first scientist, still attributed mind to all objects, inanimate as well as animate. If a rock fell from a cliff, his explanation was that this action was dictated by the mind of the rock. Even Aristotle retained the spirit concept to some degree. His view of the fall of the rock was that this was merely one manifestation of a general tendency of objects to seek their natural place. And he explained the acceleration during the fall as a result of the fact that the falling body moved more jubilantly every moment because it found itself nearer home. Ultimately, however, these vestiges of the spirit concept disappeared, and a new general concept emerged, one that has been the basis of all scientific work ever since. According to this new concept, we live in a universe of matter, one that consists of material things existing in a setting provided by space and time. With the benefit of this conceptual foundation, 3,000 years of effort by generation after generation of scientists have produced an immense systematic body of knowledge about the physical universe, an achievement which, it is safe to say, is unparalleled elsewhere in human life. In view of this spectacular record of success, which has enabled the matter concept to dominate the organized thinking of mankind ever since the days of the ancient Greeks, it may seem inconsistent to suggest that this concept is not adequate to meet present-day needs. But the ultimate fate of any scientific concept or theory is determined not by what it has done, but by what, if anything, it now fails to do. The graveyard of science is full of theories that were highly successful in their day, and contributed materially to the advance of scientific knowledge while they enjoyed general acceptance. The caloric theory, the phlogiston theory, the Ptolemaic theory of astronomy, the billiard ball theory of the atom, and so on. It is appropriate, therefore, that we should, from time to time, subject all of our basic scientific ideas to a searching and critical examination, for the purpose of determining whether or not these ideas, which have served us well in the past, are still adequate to meet the more exciting demands of the present. Once we subject the concept of a universe of matter to a critical scrutiny of this kind, it is immediately obvious not only that this concept is no longer adequate for its purpose, but that modern discoveries have completely demolished its foundations. If we live in a world of material things, existing in a framework provided by space and time, as envisioned in the concept of a universe of matter, then matter in some form is the underlying feature of the universe, that which persists through the various physical processes. This is the essence of the concept. For many centuries, the atom was accepted as the ultimate unit, but when particles smaller, or at least less complex, than atoms were discovered, and it was found that under appropriate conditions, atoms would disintegrate and emit particles in the process, the subatomic particles took over the role of the ultimate building blocks. But we now find that these particles are not permanent building blocks either. For instance, the neutron, one of the constituents from which the atom is currently supposed to be constructed, spontaneously separates into a proton, an electron, and a neutrino. Here then, one of the elementary particles, the supposedly basic and unchangeable units of matter, transforms itself into other presumably basic and unchangeable units. In order to save the concept of a universe of matter, strenuous efforts are now being made to explain events of this kind by postulating still smaller elementary particles from which the known subatomic particles can be constructed. At the moment, the theorists are having a happy time constructing theoretical quarks or other hypothetical subparticles and endowing these products of the imagination with an assortment of properties such as charm, color, and so on, to enable them to fit the experimental data. But this descent to a lower stratum of physical structure could not be accomplished even in the realm of pure hypothesis without taking another significant step away from the reality. At the time the atomic theory was originally proposed by Democritus and his contemporaries, the atoms of which they conceived all physical structures to be composed were entirely hypothetical. But subsequent observations and experiments have revealed the existence of units of matter that have exactly the properties that were attributed to them by the atomic theory, attributed to the atoms by the atomic theory. As matters now stand, therefore, this theory can legitimately claim to represent reality. But there are no observed particles that have all of the properties that are required in order to qualify as constituents of the observed atoms. The theorists have therefore resorted to the highly questionable expedient of assuming entirely ad hoc that the observed subatomic particles are the atomic constituents, but have different properties when they are in atoms than those they are found to have whenever they can be observed independently. This is a radical departure from the standard scientific practice of building theories on solid factual foundations, and its legitimacy is doubtful, to say the least. But the architects of the quark theories are going a great deal farther, as they are cutting loose from objective reality altogether and building entirely on assumptions. Unlike the hypothetical constituents of the atoms, which are observed subatomic particles with hypothetical sets of properties instead of the observed properties. The quarks are hypothetical particles with hypothetical properties. The unreliability of the conclusions reached by this means, by means of forced and artificial constructions, should be obvious. But it is not actually necessary to pass judgment on this basis, because irrespective of how far the subdividing matter into smaller and smaller particles is carried, the theory of elementary particles of matter cannot account for the observed existence of processes whereby matter is converted into non-matter, and vice versa. This interconvertibility is positive and direct proof that the matter concept is wrong, that the physical universe is not a universe of matter. Clearly, there must be some entity more basic than matter, some common denominator underlying both matter and non-material phenomena. Such a finding, which makes conventional thinking about physical fundamentals obsolete, is no more welcome today than the matter concept was in the world of antiquity. Old habits of thought, like old shoes, are comfortable, and the automatic reaction to any suggestion of a major change in basic ideas is resisted, if not outright resented. But if scientific progress is to continue, it is essential not only to generate new ideas to meet new problems, but also to be equally diligent in discarding old ideas that have outlived their usefulness. Okay, we're going to leave it there right now. Find this is very interesting in terms of just how he's lamenting how the scientific community eventually just lost track of reality and started proposing hypothesis upon hypothesis and ad hoc, postulations. That seems very much like our current society right now. So, okay, tune in for tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in today.